when silence feels like absence. I keep checking the sky like it owes me a reply, refreshing prayers the way I refresh my phone, as if God's voice runs on my timeline, as if silence means he ghosted me. But maybe the problem is not heaven when quiet. Maybe it's that I filled the room with escape routes, Tarshish plans, busy hands, religious noise dressed up as obedience. Jonah did not lose God's voice. He just did not like what it was saying. Because calling feels heavier when it costs you comfort. Because obedience sounds different when it disrupts your plans, and I wonder how many times I called it silence. When it was really conviction knocking without permission, I say, God speak. But what I mean is God agree. God confirmed what I already decided. God bless the direction I'm running. Still, he speaks. Through storms that interrupt my cruise control faith, through detours that expose what direction I was actually headed, through mercy that chases you down instead of letting you disappear. So silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's the pursuit without the applause. A God who refuses to compete with your distractions, a voice waiting for you to stop running long enough to hear it. So in scripture, we look at Jonah 1, verses 1 through 3. It said, the Lord gave this message to Jonah, son of Amittai. Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh, announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked the people are. But Jonah got up and went the opposite direction, away from the Lord. And then we look at Psalms 46:10. It says, surrender your anxiety, be silent, and stop your striving, and you will see that I am God. Looking at Jonah's story, we see it doesn't begin with rebellion. It begins with clarity. God speaks plainly. Go to Nineveh. Jonah understands exactly what God is asking, but the tension is resistance. It's not from confusion. We often say we can't hear God, but scripture shows us that sometimes the issue is not volume, it's willingness. Jonah doesn't argue with God, he runs. And in his running, he mistakes distance for silence. God does not stop speaking when Jonah boards the ship. He sends a storm, not as punishment, but as interruption. And God refuses to let Jonah's disobedience become his destination. That matters. Silence would have been easier. Absence would have been simpler, but God pursues. Many of us are in seasons when God feels quiet, yet our lives are loud in distractions. We fill our days with motion, achievement, content, spiritual activity, and wonder why intimacy feels so distant. In Psalms, it reminds us that stillness is not passive, but it's surrendered. It's a posture that makes space for God's voice to be recognized again. God's not competing with your noise. He's patient enough to wait for your attention, and Jonah had to sit in that tension of the storm to realize God was still present. And even then, God's goal was not to shame, but redirection. If you feel like God's going silent, ask yourself an honest question. Are you listening for his voice or hoping he will approve of your direction? God speaks to guide, not to comfort. And sometimes the silence you feel is an invitation to stop running long enough to hear his clarity again.